Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids. Today we are diving in to help out some viewers, and I do say we intentionally, but we're going to be helping out some viewers early in the game with building up some arena teams for Classic and for 3v3. I'm joined today by none other than Eherbad. Dude, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Blindingly white, that I don't have dark mode for YouTube, so I'm sorry to everyone that just got blinded by their screens. But Eherbad, you describe yourself right as endgame free to play, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I've been playing the game for about 2.5 years now, and endgame player, one key, Nightmare Hydra, and in Gold 4 tag team arena, etc., etc.
Yeah. So one thing I really like about Eherbad's channel, you do a lot of really cool stuff. Like you've got like guides through the different fusions for free to play. The thing that really inspired today's video is you're starting a new arena series, breaking down like building rosters to different roles, and we're going to be touching on some of that today. So yeah, I think it's very, very cool. I actually remember, dude, that I first saw you on Hell Hades stream. Like this is probably back 1.5 years ago or something. And at the time, I was like basically free to play myself at that point. I wasn't a content creator. And I had thought like, oh man, I'm pretty good at this free to play stuff. I'm pretty efficient. And then I saw you do a showcase and I was like, okay, no, my account sucks in comparison. I'm nowhere near as good at this stuff as you are. Very smart. So yeah, you're going to be helping me to go through these accounts. These are from viewers that you guys submitted in the Discord. So thank you everyone that submitted. And we'll also be doing a second video over on Eherbad's channel where we're going to look at a more advanced account, someone that's a bit further on, like maybe a year and a half in, and see what we could do with them when they've got like lots more options in terms of legendaries. So like all that mindset for building teams. All right, though, let's dive in. So this is account number 1. This is from Enoch. He is 195 days into the game. So he's just a couple of weeks past Sil of the Drakes. You can see he's got his Sil right there. He's already started leveling her. One of the reasons I wanted to do this guy is because I was looking at this and I see a lot of me here in terms of that Bellower, Frozen Banshee, Galek, and Armiger. Like this was me back 6 months into the game. These are my champs now. I didn't have this, and obviously I didn't have as many legendaries at the time or anything, but yeah, I was like, okay, I see some of my own account in this guy. But Eherbad, what were you thinking when you first saw this and you were like, okay, let's start to build? What sort of arena teams can we build? What were you thinking?
So my first thought, obviously, with tag team, you need 12 champions. And I was like, we don't actually have that many 60s to choose from. So it obviously narrows your choices quite a lot. And typically speaking, when you're at this point in the game, tag team isn't ever going to be a primary focus. It's always going to be something you'll try to develop and try to do on the side as you're progressing the more critical parts of the game. Yeah. You have that classic trajectory: Minnow, Dungeons, Clan Boss, Faction War, Doom Tower, Hydra, and like tag team just sort of floats around in the background, and you do end up developing it as you develop all those other areas. So like that first thing is, do we actually have 12 champions that fill arena roles, and how can we kind of optimize with what we've got? So yeah, I think the first thing I did was sit down, take those roles that I mentioned in the video.
Let me actually get that up.
Which were Nuker, Cleanser, Buff Stripper, Control, Support, Protection. And then when you're earlier game, there kind of is another role that's more important in an early game capacity than it is in a late game. Yeah. And that really becomes kind of debuffer, and by that really drop defense, because the reality is when you're early to mid game, do your nukers do enough damage without defense down to actually kill the enemy?
Exactly.
Probably not. Probably not. So
yeah. So well, I mean, if we look at, for example, a team 1, like we do have Arbiter here, and I think it's sort of a no-brainer. Like when you get Arbiter as a free-to-play player, this is a champion that you're going to be using as one of your main arena champions, if not like the key for your team for at least 1.5 years, if not more, if not forever. But in terms of an attack-based nuker to go with her, right, the best one that we actually have here is probably Galek the Rare. So as you said, decreased defense probably becomes quite a bit more important there, because we're not talking about a Baron or a Leorius or one of these like insane void legendary nukers that don't need decreased defense. Galek hits hard. He does hit hard. I think he actually hits slightly the hardest of the starter champions by like 0.5% or something, but it's gonna be difficult to one-shot people.
100%. I think, like you say, at that point in time, you really need the increased attack. You really need the drop defense. Like, you've got to be teeing those up to have a realistic chance of coming close to one-shotting or one-shotting the enemy.
Yes.
And generally speaking, people probably don't have really tanky, high resistance stone skin teams. So
exactly.
Hopefully we'll be in a position where we don't necessarily need quite the level of survivability or control that we would do later in the game, but we're still going to have to try and ensure that we're able to get our abilities off without getting cut in. So my thinking in that team would probably be that we'd pair Arbiter with Deacon, which has pros and cons. The con being we lose another good lead that we would maybe like to use in another team, but at least it gives us a form of control. Deacon with the TM exchange gives us an element of control, so we can consider Deacon as a control and a debuffer, so he kind of fills two roles as a champion. And we can speed tune the team such that Arbiter into Deacon into our nuker, we can get a situation that we don't get cut in. And if we can't speed tune Gaelic to that, we'll have to come up with some other solution to ensure that we stay alive. And that, I thought, would probably be Helicath. That we can use Helicath as a form of protection to ensure that we definitely take our turn with Gaelic. And as long as the enemy doesn't have any kind of stripper in their team, we'll actually get 2 rounds off. Helicath is probably built quite quick for clan boss, so that should work nicely in the team. I think most people probably have Helicath around about 240 speed is, I think, quite common for a lot of those clan boss style teams, which is got to be the number one priority, of course, but it does fit in well into arena. And that we both actually came up with almost the same sort of thing for this one, in fact, which was that, well, probably Helicath is good to start off with now. Ultimately, bringing in someone like Molly would probably be sort of the ideal thing. So the concept being that you've got a fast Arbiter boost you up, then Deacon gives you another boost, and then you've got Molly with a nice high accuracy score. She can come in and actually provoke the enemy team. If they do happen to go first, it gives you a bit of a chance to get back in if their nuker's a bit weak, at this point in the game, that with her passive, she can maybe cut in and save you with her revive. And then you've got Galek comes in and nukes with the decreased defense. Because definitely a weak, there's lots of weaknesses for these rosters, but in terms of people that can strip buffs or that can cleanse off or resist, like these provokes like Molly throws out, for example, it's definitely quite limited. Like, in terms of how do we strip buffs with this particular roster here, like, we don't have a Madame Ceres. We're obviously going to be quite far off Rian the Conjurer. Like, we don't even have Archmage at this point in the game, So that becomes much more limited. Like, we've got Mighty Uko, the fusion, so that's very helpful. But that's it in terms of buff strippers. It's just something that at this point in the game, you don't really have, but you can also exploit that somewhat. It makes your Helicath, for example, super powerful. Cardial, who we have here, actually becomes ridiculously powerful, and so on. So yeah, exactly. And it transitions nicely into kind of having a clear idea of when you pull new champions, how they might fit in. So we have that kind of Arbiter and future Morley being a really powerful duo within that first team. And you could say, well, okay, maybe in the future Deacon will become a buff stripper to ensure that we get the control off from Morley. And Gaelic will become a better attack-based nuker to ensure that we're still getting the benefit from Arbiter's increased attack. And that we're slowly transitioning from sort of an earlier to mid-game account into a full-on mid-game and trying to progress up tag team, and we're just making those marginal incremental gains in each one.
What did you think then about Team 2? So Team 1, we've got Arbiter, right? Fantastic. Big speed aura. We're sticking with the Deacon. Like that, for this level of account, that's a super fast team. We're not going up against full stone skin reaction. That's going to be super powerful. Probably going to be your classic arena team for ages as well. It's going to be very effective. But what about Team 2 now? And this is where it becomes going a completely different angle where, well, I guess we've got Haikatuna over here, but in terms of speed, we're really falling off. So what do we do in that situation?
So my thinking with the second team is I really wanted to make use of the best nuker I can see on the account, which is Soulless. So we have a fantastic defense-based nuker, and it really becomes a question of how can we set that nuker up. So for me, I thought it makes perfect sense to use
Like Kyoku.
Kyoku.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to see where she was on the.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on?
Imagine
to
the
make perfect
Kyoku.
sense to use Kyoku, who is not only just fills the protection role, but also through the passive gives us the increased defense if we get hit first, which I'd assume 9 times out of 10 we're going to get hit first with this team. And then my kind of thinking of the third champion would be Syl. Syl will give us some support, a bit of control, a revive, some ongoing heals. And then the fourth slot becomes a bit questionable. And who I'd like to fill in that role would be Goffred. Not quite ready yet, hasn't been built, but has a great passive. Again, gives us another way of staying alive. Between Kyoku and Goffred's passive, that team becomes a bit of a nightmare, particularly if you, as an attacker, don't have a good way of buff stripping yourself, which we're noticing a trend when we look through these accounts that tends to be something people don't have necessarily in the early to mid game. So if you have those two passives together, that's a horrendous team to try and attack.
So nasty. So nasty. It's like, it's always the thing when you're putting up a defense, is always thinking like, how would I attack this defense? Would I want to fight this if this was me? And like, certainly later in the game, I would say, you know, this is not a problem that you would face 6 months in though. But for me, I'd be going like, throw in my Romantu, they're gonna fall over. But I mean, like, if you're 6 months, if you're a year in, if you're a year and a half in, and you're going up against someone with Romantu, you kind of go, okay, you know what? You get to win. All right, that's fine. You're way further in the game, you win. That's fine. It's not something that we're going to have to worry about when we're against sort of similar level accounts, or even accounts that are even a few months ahead of this one. It's not going to be a problem. And in that situation, it's like, how do you deal with these passive abilities? That becomes really difficult. Now, he's obviously been very lucky. Goffred was a guaranteed. We're going to see that one of the other accounts we're going to look at does have Goffred. And obviously Syl is a champion that everyone gets and everyone is going to build pretty much. Got very lucky that Kyoku and the Solus, for sure, they're not going to be options for everyone. But on this account, it's like, yes, we put these things together and it makes sense. What about a fourth team then? Or sorry, not a fourth team, a third team. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Oh my God.
I mean, are you giving Plarium some ideas about what the next arena mode's going to be?
Oh no.
We've got tag team, now we've got multi-tag team.
Could you imagine?
6 arena teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the third team, I was like, well, we have another fantastic support champion in Cardiel.
Yeah,
we've saved. We didn't use him in the first team. We didn't even use him in the second team. And we've now got the option to use him in the third. He gives us a natural lead. He gives us block debuffs. He gives us an ally attack, revive on death. Like, fantastic champion. All in one. And then it becomes a case of, well, who do we want as the nuker? Now, what's nice about having Magnar as the damage dealer in this team is obviously Cardiel doesn't bring increased defense or increased attack, but Magnar doesn't care. So,
that's right.
You know, we're kind of looking for the best synergies. We've gone for an attack nuker with Arbiter, defense nuker with the defense up.
I'm sure there were some observant viewers which were going, why are you putting Galek in your Arbiter team when you've got Magnar? Like, Magnar's better. This is why. Because it's better to use him for a separate team for tag, because of what you said. HP based nuker. He doesn't need that Arbiter boost. So yeah, we can, like, it's about arranging your champions in the most efficient way. Sorry, I interrupted. Continue.
No, it's a valid point, because obviously that speed team for your classic cleave, you probably wouldn't run Galek in it. You probably would run Magnar until you have a better attack-based nuker.
Yeah,
you might even be using Cardiel.
Well, I was going to say you could
in place of Helicat.
Of Helicat, 100%. Cardiel would be stronger in that situation in Magnar, but for tag, it's better to split them up.
Yeah, something that I noticed when I was earlier in the game is that my classic arena team, I tended to break it up for the for tag team, because they tended to be like my 4 best built champions. So I needed to have them in at least 2 or 3 teams. Otherwise, I'd only have 1 team that could win and then 2 teams that would lose. And in tag, we want to be winning 2 out of 3, not 1 out of 3.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. if you're only winning 1 out of 3, it's a bad time. I mean, that's something that's worth pointing out as well. We might see that with one of the later accounts, but it might be worth just going, okay, I'll build 2 really good teams, and then the third team can be absolutely terrible, and I'm not going to split my best champs up across 3 teams. It's okay at this point to just have 2 good ones, because it's hard. It's really hard. Like, this guy's got lucky with the Solus and Kyoku, and that's super helped, and Cardiel is insanely good. But yeah, it can be really tricky to get 3 viable teams, if not almost impossible. So just try to get 2 good ones, because hey, if you're winning 2 out of 3, you're winning overall, and that's totally fine. Yes, we got Cardiel, Magnar. Who are the other 2 champions that would probably fit best with this team? We're going to probably want some defense, because we're not a super fast team.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking we have Ultimate Death Knight as protection. Makes perfect sense. Great protection champion, been given to everyone who's been playing the game recently. And he fills in a lot of nice protection roles. We've got the increase... we've got the continuous heal and the passive that kind of counters the single target damage dealers. So that fits in nicely along with Cardiel. I was thinking between the 2 of them, we should hopefully survive something.
Yes.
At least be in a position. You know, when you're on offense using these teams, you can always pick which damage dealer you're placing your Ultimate Death Knight up against.
True.
Which means you can always look for the Rotos, the Mountain King, etc. And he even has some ways of mitigating a little bit the damage you take from people like Trunder and Foley, because Foley has that double hit, and
absolutely.
Andrafon on his A1, etc. So there are ways, even with the AoE nukers, that you can finesse it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my last option in that team, I was thinking we'd bring in Mighty Uko. Gives us a revive, gives us some form of support. We've used all the other supports in the other teams already, so we needed someone, and gives us a way of stripping the enemy's buffs as well. So it becomes quite a bit of a nuisance team again. You know, you've got, if Cardiel's really fast, and bear in mind that a lot of other people aren't going to have 3 fast teams either.
No,
and they have to then make a decision if they're attacking you. It's like, well, do I put my fast team against the annoying Kyoku team because I know I'll win the speed race, but then I'm going to trigger all the passives? And if I do, and I put my slow team against the Cardiel team, is Cardiel going to be faster than me anyway?
That could happen for sure. And then it's a nightmare. Once he gets that revive on death, the block debuffs up. Yeah, I mean, unless you've got Madame Ceres, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to be nasty. I was thinking,
if you have Madame, though, you can't. One of the buffs is protected.
Oh yeah, it's
and
protected.
Magnar doesn't care about having decreased attack or decreased defense on him. He'll steal new card. He doesn't care.
I was thinking that, well, because Mighty Uko isn't built up right now, you could stick into Eliana as like an option as well. She could even be in the lead potentially if you're thinking, you know, on offense. It's like, okay, they're definitely faster than us. We're not in a rush to take our turn. We just want to try survive. HP Aura, she actually has a nice little passive that puts strength in on everyone, so that could help you actually survive that first hit, which I think is sort of the weakness of this team, is actually not getting killed with the first hit. Once you get up and rolling, you're really good with the Ultimate Death Knight passive and Cardiel doing his stuff. It's like, yeah, we're good. But surviving that first hit's going to be tough. She could help you out with that at the start here. But yeah, it's quite a nasty team. Like, how do you actually deal with it if it gets up and rolling? It can be so tricky because they're all very tanky champions. You can build them all to be tanky. And of course, that Ultimate Death Knight passive redirecting stuff. Lots of healing as well from Cardiel. People really underestimate that. So yeah, interesting. In terms of a couple of quick questions then, so like, I guess one important question would be, if you were going up against a speed team, like an Arbiter team, like which of these teams would you use against the enemy's Arbiter team?
I'd say if we were fighting an Arbiter team and they didn't have any form of buff strip, I would almost certainly try that defense team.
Yeah, team 2, the red one.
Goku, Solus,
Goffred and Syl, yeah.
Yeah, like I just think if there's almost no chance they're gonna one-shot you.
Yeah.
The chance of them having the ability to one-shot you without either like a Remand 2 or a Warlord or someone.
Yeah.
either put your skills on cooldown or block your passives or strip you of all your buffs. Like, they're just not going to kill you. And Solus hits so hard.
He sure does. He's got a 4-star Awakened Solus as well. This guy got super lucky there. Oh my goodness. He hasn't even fully ascended him, but he's got him 4-star Awakened. So yeah, he's prepared nicely for that. But yeah, I definitely think as well, as you guys can see, I think this, again, is really important to reiterate, is that, for example, like, yes, as an attack-based nuker, we could, for example, go in, we could build Nagorio. Is Nagorio better than Galek? It's like, yeah, he's way better than Galek, and he's probably, I mean, Skrank could be an option as well for an attack-based nuker. But that's not something that's a huge priority right now. Like, how much is it going to help this account everywhere? Maybe not so much. Whereas bringing in some like Mighty Uko, who's 5-star level 50 here, ranking up Mighty Uko, bringing them into a team. Obviously, the Sylve the Drakes is still 50. Like, these are champions that you rank up, and they're going to hard carry Faction Wars. They're going to hard carry Dungeons, Doom Tower. They're going to be amazing. Hydra, they're both going to be extremely good at this point in the game. They're going to be super useful for you in lots of different areas, and that's something you got to do. Like we said, you're not necessarily going to hard focus on 3v3 until you're stuck on that Romanti mission where you need to, which is what we're going to talk about in Airbad's video on his channel. But yeah, it's all about sort of prioritizing stuff that makes sense everywhere, but then building these sort of smart teams. I think we should jump straight across to the second account, because I think it's quite an interesting comparison. If we come over here, and this was from Smasher, who's actually earlier in the game. He's 160 days into the game. He's actually had some really good luck, I would say. He's pulled some really nice legendaries. But it's similar. We've got a lot of the similar stuff, because we've got like if we got the fusions, which are, the same. We've got Uko and Helicath and all of that. We got like the Deliana, the Ultimate Death Knight. We've got some similar stuff. Goffred was guaranteed from Blues. But it then becomes this question of, do we go in different directions here, though? Because we got slightly different champions. Does this mix up some of the teams? So what do we think about this one?
Yeah, so this one was interesting. And again, I approached it from the same way. I put all the champions into those categories. I think, did I send you the screenshot of that one? Or should I just
I
do
don't
that
think
now
you did.
quickly so you can you can add it into the video?
Yes. I can actually open it straight away. But
and I like analyzing it this way because it very quickly tells you what you have and what you don't have to work with. And you can see we've got an abundance of protection.
Yes.
Champions. Like, we've got so many options, almost too many options. Like, I don't know which one to use. I want to use them all. But we don't have really any support. We're very limited on the support side of things. We have obviously Arbiter.
Yeah.
And beyond that,
like Runkeeper,
our next best support is probably Mighty Uko.
Yeah.
It kind of comes at that's where I found the difficulty in terms of figuring out the teams on this one, is we didn't have that many natural supports or leads or kind of a champion that's we're gonna base the team around. In terms of nukers, we have a Skull Crown and a Magnar.
Yeah,
and I like. We use both of those. We like them. They're classic arena nukers that everyone wants to use. One thing that I felt we were probably missing, and would be something to look out for in the future, depending on what champions are pulled, is a defense-based nuker.
Yeah, they're rare, but they can be very strong. Yes, particularly
because we've got quite a few champions that kind of partner nicely with defense-based teams. We have Sandlash, we have Andrisia, we have Goffred, and even Ultimate Death Knight.
There are even Helicat, like loads of them.
Himself. There's so many champions here. When you're looking at that protection list, you're like, this is just calling out for a defense-based nuker, or someone to tee up a defense-based team like Seeker or Kyoku. And they're like, we haven't got any of those. So
not this time. No Kyoku this time. So what do we? Will I spoil all three teams at once here, or do we want to go through them one by one, and then go through them, or we go through them one by one?
We'll go through them kind of one by one. But I think the interesting thing is we both looked at this and we had the same initial thought. The obvious kind of classic arena team is Arbiter into Deacon.
The exact same that we did with the first guy, right?
Exactly, with either Skull Crown or Magna as nuke, depending on how they're built and etc. But probably Skull Crown. Yeah.
I was thinking you could maybe run, again, Calvalax as a nuker, but depending on his build, he does hit hard. People are not going to be in Stone Skin and stuff. He's going to put out a bunch of poisons as well to make him hit a bit harder. So he could be a good one because he's already built. He's already 60. So it's like, hey, we got a big hard-hitting dude. It's already level 60 attack-based nuker. He could be an option too. He's already there. So, but yeah,
exactly. And then probably Helicath again to give us the option to have a second turn.
Yeah,
because we don't really have necessarily a way of, like, we don't have a Madame Cerise. We don't have a way of guaranteeing that we're going to kill them in one shot. So, you know, always having that little bit of redundancy that we will get a second turn.
We do have one more stripper here, but we're still super limited on the strippers, right? Again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a theme.
So then, given that, we're like, well, if we use those 4 champions in the first team, what are we going to do with the rest?
Yeah, you're starting to run low on other teams, right?
So we went for, I think our general thought process was actually split up even more than we did in the first video.
Yeah.
And ultimately have Arbiter in one team, Deacon in another, and Magnar in the third.
In the third
so we end
team.
up like splitting that classic team 3 ways instead of just 2 ways.
Yeah.
So then, like you say, it becomes a question of, well, how do we compensate for having spread our resources so thinly? And I was thinking, you know, Arbiter is the support, speed lead, etc. Into Sylar for control. You have that AoE, drop turn meter and drop speed. Then probably Ugo to give us the drop defense. Also gives us a nice little block buffs, which works really well against certain champions such as Leoris or Skullcrown.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, in fact, Skullcrown
herself. Yeah.
For ourselves. Getting that, looking for the attack-based nuker to pair with Arbiter to make sure that we're getting the benefit from the increased attack in that team.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a very different team then from the one that we came up with for the first account, where with that first account, if I jump back to it, it was like the speed team was like boosting, and then another boost with the decreased defense Deacon doing the old 2-for-1 job, then potentially going even with the Molly, going in with control, waiting stuff out, going in with your nuker, which is like more of a late game sort of thing. This one is a team that obviously gets really flummoxed by reaction or stone skin later in the game, but right now actually very strong. You know, it's so difficult for a team to come back. If you got the Arbiter turn meter boost with Sylar as well, it's like that's so much speed that so long as Arbiter goes first and you've speed tuned your Sylar, it's like that they can't really cut in. And then trying to get in there when they've got block buffs on probably most of their team, and trying to kill a Skullcrown who gets unkillable as well, that becomes very difficult. Once you go first with this team, like, you're so safe. You've got such a good chance of winning, just because of how it's set up. Again, until you get to that really late game point. So very different style of speed team, but also very powerful.
100%, because like you say, early to mid game, people don't have that many cleansers or buff strippers. That tends to be the champion type that becomes more and more prevalent towards the end game. But because there aren't actually that many of them in the game,
true,
most people don't have 3 or 4 of them.
Yes,
until really much later down the line.
Yeah,
like you said, probably the most accessible one is Rian, who's the 3rd normal Doom Tower champion.
She might be the 3rd. Yeah,
she's third.
2nd or 3rd.
It's Helmut, Akoth, Rian.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so she's 9 months minimum.
That takes a while.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a long time.
So, like, she is the one that most people can work towards and should. Like, particularly if you're not lucky and you haven't pulled a Madame earlier. But the reality is, if we're looking at other people at a similar stage of the game, then they're also going to struggle to strip your own buffs. So you got to play to your advantages. The weaknesses you have are probably shared by your peers. So, you know,
most likely. But Airbad, tell me about this though. Look at this. In terms of the champions we've picked one legendary, which is Arbiter, and we've picked a whole bunch of epics. We've got a bunch of legendaries sitting to the side. Are any of these going to come in? Is there any chance for these legendaries, these insane ones here, to come in? I just think it's quite funny that we've they haven't been like the first ones that we go to in these very first slots here. In terms of the
That's true. It hadn't even occurred to me that we're ignoring all the legendaries and just picking the epics. Well, some of them are, but the first champion in the second team, I was thinking would be Deacon. So we're back in the epics once more.
So we got Deacon. He gives us speed aura, the turn meter boost, the decreased defense.
Yeah, exactly. So he's kind of filling 2 roles there: a bit of control in the TM drop, and a bit of support and a bit of debuff. So really kind of a triple role there. We've got obviously the aura, we got the TM boost for ourselves, a bit of control by TM depletion on them, and the drop defense in a debuff role. I was then thinking of Goffred as
Yes.
the second champion.
Yeah.
Now, it depends slightly how he's built, but I would assume probably at this stage of account, he's mostly there for control with that 100% chance to stun on AoE basis. Really, not that many champions that have that level of control.
True.
And early to mid game, that is so critical in terms of progression through Doom Tower, through dungeons, any kind of wave content.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
like a 100% chance to crowd control is so strong.
Yeah, like he's basically anyone that got him, and I know we had him on the first account as well, but not built up. But like this is a champion, even just for faction wars alone, because dwarves, like the last boss, is the one that tries to one-shot your dudes. Like Goffred comes in with that passive, and it's like, yo, just made faction wars a heck of a lot easier. Not to mention, like you said, the control and the A1, the AOE stun. So yeah, and he's fantastic for arena. I just did a video on him actually a couple of days ago. He's really nice champion, even later in the game for arena. Like if you don't have, neck red, which you probably don't. So if you don't have a neck red, he's really nice for that, even late game, as well as all the
my
stuff.
most wanted champion, actually.
Neck red? Yeah, pretty much the same. He's one of my top ones. I got lots, but who are you going to pair with these guys? So it's like sort of a pseudo speed team right now. Not super quick, but the nice thing, we've got that passive to try to protect us, even if we do get outsped. But who do we put with this?
So I was thinking we'd have some kind of protection in terms of Andrisia, who I thought would pair nicely with Goffred through the fact that she can extend increased defense if we ever get to the point of actually using Goffred for increased defense. He does have it in his kit.
He does.
If the fight goes on for a long time, it could come in handy. And then she also has that really strong passive to help protect. So those two passives again in kind of tandem. We've got Goffred's passive and Andrisia's passive. I think that's one of the big things also to remember before Ultra Endgame is that passive's your friend. Like, other than Ramantu, no other champion in the game can block a passive. So they're so strong when used kind of to your advantage.
Yeah.
And then the last slot would be a nuker. Ideally, that defense-based nuker that we don't have.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's got a super uber damage dealing Helicath, who knows? But he's probably in the other team.
Yeah, exactly. But in the meantime, it could even be that Calvalax you mentioned. So you kind of get the poisons in the initial stage. So you've got a way of kind of chipping away at them paired with your control that you've got of your own team. So you're going, got that AoE stun from Goffred and the poison, so they're going to tick all the damage. And then you have Calvalax has an AoE hit. There are options there you can choose. You could even use Kale if you wanted to. You could use Magnar, who would also obviously fit well, but I'd kind of saved Magnar for the third team. So it becomes a question, it becomes a toss-up. You could decide actually, okay, we'll put Magnar in there and have two really strong teams and sacrifice a bit on the third team.
One thing that you could do, I do think that the Skull Crown passive clashes, I think, with Goffred. So I think that if she is going to die, I think it triggers both her unkillable passive and his block damage passive. Not 100% sure, but you could, for example, you could stick Calvalax into that nuking team if you were confident that you would go first and you don't rely on Skullcrown's passive and his affinity's good. You could then potentially even put Skullcrown in this team, and perhaps the Goffred passive might protect like your Deacon or your Andrisia instead. And that could actually work out pretty well too, like as another option. Just rearranging the nukers, it's just something you can do in tag team. If you got the time, you can mix your team, especially if you're going to manual it, and it's not going to mess up presets. Then it's something that you could do as well.
And definitely, and that's something that if you've watched any of the strategy videos where I show Gold 4 Tag Team Arena, where I'm doing the kind of offense during the weekend, sort of the reset offense. I'm constantly rejigging my teams as a way to counter the enemy. And one of the things that I do recommend is to build all your nukers in quite a tight speed range, so they're all able to be interchanged with one another, and you can swap them around within the teams to best suit whatever your needs are at a given point in time.
You like to build them around about 200 speed, I think you were saying in that video, right? It's around about there?
Yeah, I all of mine are between like 190 and 210. And I know that once you get down to sort of really ultra endgame plat level, people will slow them down even more. But
Yeah.
because even though I'm on Gold 4 tag team, I'm still using these champions in other content. I find that if I really slow them down and have them as arena only builds, then they're kind of unusable elsewhere. So I'd rather still be in a position where I can make use of those champions in other content, and they're still going to be strong enough in arena that I'm able to maintain Gold 4 tag team. I think that's kind of the balance that I'm happy with. And I don't want to spend like 3 million silver every day
no way.
to rebuild champions, which
no chance.
is another option.
All right, well, with this final team, we've got Magnar locked in there. We were mentioning the really powerful passives. I'm assuming, I don't remember actually what the team was. I'm assuming we have Sandlashed in there with that passive to take that first initial hit, putting ally protection on everyone, halving the damage they're going to be taking. She herself gets block damage. Like, that surely has got to be one that goes in. But who else are we thinking in here?
100%. So I was thinking, basically, we have Sandlashed for the protection and the passive.
Yeah.
We have Magnar for the damage, the win condition. We have Uko as a form of revive, buff strip, kind of just nuisance champion.
Yes.
And Helikath. So we're bringing that Helikath into the third team this time instead of the first team in the first time. And Helikath will probably be one of the quickest champions on that team.
Yeah.
If he gets his block damage away, that's a nuisance. If Sandlash's passive is there, that's a nuisance. Uko can revive. If she's the last one surviving, that's a nuisance. And Magnar will always do damage unless he's crowd controlled. So he's a nuisance. So it's just like, make it as awkward as possible for the enemy. And that will work nicely on defense, but I think you can also make it work for you on offense. If you pick
100%.
which team you're going to pair that against or going to face that up against, all of that annoyance can work in your favor every time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's such a nasty combo. It's like, if Helikath gets a turn, 2 turns block damage on everyone. It's like you put him with a champion. Like, I mean, later in the game, you could put them in like Stone Skin or Reaction's going to help. But like right now, champions like Vogoth, champions like Sandlash, who have these super OP passives, these are ones to look for on your accounts because they open up this go second team. That's so nasty to attack in because it's like, it's so hard to kill them with Sandlash passive on turn 1. And then if Helikath gets his thing up, it's like, nightmare. And then like, hey, if you even do manage to kill the Sandlash or Helikath, you've got the revive. It's that's what you want in that defense team. It's going like, how do I attack this? And it becomes a very good option to the speed teams as well, unless they have, the block buffs or something that can mess you up. But yeah, it becomes that. We haven't even used Ultimate Death Knight actually in this one, which was slightly surprising. You could potentially sub him in for one of the teams. I don't think we put him in there. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like with Ultimate Death Knight, he's really strong, particularly on offense, because you can choose when you use him against those single target damage dealers.
Yeah.
And 100% when you're controlling the fight and you're making these decisions, you can choose to swap any of those protection champions, be it Andrisia in Team 2, Sandlashed in Team 3, or even someone in the speed team you could probably swap out depending on the enemy you're fighting. It could be Sylar if you don't need the control. If they're a very slow team, you can bring an Ultimate Death Knight there. If you're going against like a Sify Rotos team and they don't have any form of control in that team, you could feel like, well, I can boost with Arbiter, Sify will go, Rotos can't do anything because I got Ultimate Death Knight, and then I'll deal with the rest of it with my own team.
One thing
on defense, the thing with Ultimate Death Knight is you can always bring an AoE champion against him. So he is stronger on offense than defense. So he is a great champion, and we would have used him if we weren't blessed with so many protection options here. We actually had the flexibility to save him for offense and not actually need to use him on defense.
Yeah. One thing I was checking there I thought would have been cool, but doesn't look like it would work, is that because Sandlash gives herself block damage, it's like, oh, what if when Helikath puts 2 turns block damage out and it replaces it, does that do the increased defense? But unfortunately, no, because that would have been really slick. But it's only when it's buff placed by this champion. So that's a slight bummer. But that could have been kind of cool, right? To have like a nuker Sandlashed that survives with her block damage turn 1, then Helikath replaces it. It's like increased defense Sandlash because she hits hard.
She does hit hard. Actually having a bit of accuracy on her is also quite handy.
Yeah,
She also has a way of kind of being a buff stripper in a way.
Yeah, true. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if they go first, right, they're going to have maybe only one turn left on their buffs. She can absolutely strip them off, which is nice.
It can help.
All right. Well, let's try to go through this one a bit more quickly. I know we've been talking loads, but I think it's such an interesting topic. But we have a third account here, guys, as well, which is very different from the other two. So this one is much sort of earlier in the game, I'd say, in terms of overall progression. It's Vile Rock. Now he's 175 days in, but we can see some initially like some massive differences, not as many legendaries. And in fact, all the legendaries he's pulled are Force Affinity, which I think is fun. But no Arbiter this time, right? So what do? We've got no Arbiter. Where are we going to go with this? And we both found this one actually very difficult. And I had some really meme options, and Airbad kind of struggled and put together some actual good options. So
I reined in your
you did.
Desire to cheese
my cheese.
But it was really, really a struggle. I have to admit, like I looked at this and I was like, well, okay, we'll do the same thing. We'll create all the champions into the categories. And I realized we didn't get very far in any of the categories. And I was like, oh, God, what are we going to do?
I mean, at least none of them are empty, but we do have a Madame, for example. But it's limited for sure across the board, very limited. So we both did come up with the same first team here, which was our first go-to. And I think the go-to really in general, which is that speed team early game. So do you want to break down the speed team that we thought would be best with this selection? No Arbiter. So what did we do instead? Okay, so we just took a quick break there, guys. But we actually realized that there are a couple more things, so we stuck those in sneakily in the break. We've got a couple of new bits for protection, which does, I think, starts to make things look a little bit better, like Ultimate Death Knight. Man-Eater as well is a really nice one. Again, sort of going back to that theme of you've got a Man-Eater, you're probably building this guy up for like an unkillable team for Clan Boss or something like that. And he's actually a really good champion for Arena to fill in multiple sorts of teams. But let's build up the speed team first. What were we thinking with the speed team here? So the first go-to.
On the speed team, obviously we've got Necmo, probably the first support we noticed first on the list.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually see he's nice. He's number one. And you can also see he is built fast as well. He's about 267 speed, so not mega fast, but probably the fastest champion on the account, perhaps.
I would think so. Potentially Seeker is faster, but probably not. I would assume that Necmo's the fastest on the account. So I was thinking we've got Necmo into Seeker, which gives us that increased attack, another TM fill, plus we've got the increased speed, the TM fill, and the decreased speed coming from Necmo.
It's so good.
So we kind of got this whole combination of kind of having that speed control into a Madame, because we do have a Madame on this account. With the first account that we actually have Madame on that we're looking at. Yeah. And then a nuke. And it was like, well, who are we going to use as the nuke? And we thought, well, the guy has put in the work, the effort to get Chronum.
He has.
So why not?
Why not? Yeah, Chronum hits hard. The only point that we were bringing up as well was potentially you've built Chronum as a tank. Like you were saying, it's sort of the standard ninja build later in the game as well. You build them super tanky just for taking down the bosses. You let the HP burn do the work. So if you got a super tanky Chronam, then you might bring in something like Kale instead, or Genbo eventually building him up. But what you were kind of both thinking with Genbo, like this is not a champion that you would rush to build up, even though he is, I would say technically he is the best attack-based arena nuker that we have on the account because of like ignoring unkillable and all the rest, and he hits hard. But
I mean, 100%, I'd say he's the best arena nuker in the roster. Yeah, but I would be in absolutely no rush to build him because he doesn't bring anything else to the table. He's not going to help you progress in any other part of the game. And if we go back to that list that we mentioned in the first team, Minotaur, Dungeons, Clan Boss, Faction War, Doom Tower. Yeah. He's not bringing anything to any of them. Really.
Faction Wars is good, but it's not the first thing you build up.
He's good in Faction Wars, but he's not going to carry you to win 21 by himself.
No.
He isn't going to help you progress in any of the dungeons specifically. He's a damage dealer, but he doesn't bring any control. He doesn't bring any of the debuffs you need in that content. Like, he's a good champion, but he He's not going to be multi-purpose, and you have to invest in champions that are going to fill 2, 3, 4 areas of the game earlier on, because you only have a limited amount of resources to 6-star champions. So every 6-star has to return. Like, you've got to get that return on investment.
Exactly. All right. Well, I mean, that was the easy bit, and then we come to the hard bit, which was how the heck do you get any more teams out of this that aren't going to just fall over dead? Well, can I talk about my cheesy stuff first, and then okay. So I was looking at this, right, and I was clearly in purely an arena defense mind, because I came up with teams that actually probably can't win on offense, but could for defense be really nasty. So I was thinking, if we put Ultimate Death Knight, Withier, Helicath, and then maybe Ursula in. This is a team with really no damage, but talk about a nasty team to get through. Unfortunately, we don't have a strong passive. It'd be so good to get Seeker, for example, into this team, but I really think you need him for that speed team, unfortunately. But with his passive in the future and his aura even, good slot 1 champion for this team. But I just think for a newer player, like, you're going in and trying to get through a Withier, it's so much healing. Helicath with the block damage, the shielding, Ultimate Death Knight, super tanky, that passive. It's just a nightmare. You might kill Ursula early on, but it's a real tanky team. That's a real pain of a stall team. But on arena defense, they might have a go at it, smack it, and then go, uh-oh, now we're stuck. We actually can't kill Withier with Helicath, and they just have to quit. And speaking of that, I was going, let's go ultimate cheese. And people are going to hate me for suggesting it, but how about you stick in a Paragon in a Stone Skin set? It doesn't have to be a good Stone Skin set, just any Stone Skin set. And he just keeps giving himself unkillable. And so long as they don't have a buff stripper or like a stun or something, they're just not going to be able to kill him. And like we said, kind of a consistent theme for players at this level. Buff strippers, hard CC, stuff like that is fairly limited. So I think that's quite a nasty little option that you could put in just as an arena defense, which is just, you know what? It's so hard to build a good team. Let's just troll them. Stone Skin Paragon. And you can even build them with really high resistance if you got good Stone Skin gear. And it's like, he's just unkillable. It's like Faction Wars all over again. You can't get past him. So that was my theory. Airbad, what were the teams that you came up with here that would actually work on offense as well?
So whilst you were trying to use Plarium's tricks in the waves against the other players,
well, I'm griefing everyone here in tag.
I was thinking we kind of a similar thing in the second team, but with a win condition. Now ideally that would be a defense-based nuker, and Wither actually has a secondary role where she can set up a defense-based nuker. It's not part of her kit that's often thought of. Really, we think of her for the cleanse and the massive healing, but she also does have the increased defense. But right now, we don't really have a defense-based nuker. At least not one that's obvious.
I remember seeing like one A1 Withier. The dude had built a Withier with like 100% crit rate. I was like, oh my god, this Withier is like just absolutely styling on my team. I'd never seen it before. It's like, Commander, A1 is smacking, dude. Like, it's every turn just A1. It's nasty. But sorry, go on.
An interesting idea. You get the continuous heals. Could be a nuisance. But so in my mind, we're going to keep the Wither, and ideally in the future, it'd probably be a defense-based nuker. But I was going to pair Brachus. We've got a single target damage dealer. He at least brings a win condition. Okay, he's not going to AoE nuke them all down, but because we've got this kind of nuisance team idea, so I'm keeping the Wither, the Helicath, and the Ursula from your team, but bring in a Brachus instead of Ultimate Death Knight. So we had very similar ideas that we were going to rely on that kind of tanky protection from Wither and Helicath with the revive or the strengthen from Ursula, and Ursula also giving us an increased attack or an increased defense, kind of setting up the whatever nuker we have. And then I went down the Brachus route. So he might revive himself if they do kill him on the first nuke. The rest of the champions we can build quite tanky, so they might survive that hit.
It's hard to kill Wither.
Healing. Really hard, particularly because she's force-based, and most people have... I mean, there are so many more top-tier magic nukers than there are any other affinity.
100%.
And people tend to not build that many force-based nukers because of the Duchess problem. Force ends up being sort of undesirable. And there aren't actually that many top-tier spirit nukers.
No.
So
Yeah, Magnar is sort
Wither
of
ends
the
up
threat, but Wither's
Yeah,
so tanky.
So Wither ends up being quite a pain for people to kill, particularly earlier to mid game.
Yes, yeah.
She's so strong. So that kind of keeps that same theme that you had of being a nuisance and then basically having a win condition. And then team 3, I was thinking we would bring in the Ultimate Death Knight as the protection champion.
Yeah.
Pair that with Vasolf, who I think should be on the radar to be built.
Definitely.
Is actually really strong for a number of areas of the game. Does do great damage, is useful in multiple secret rooms, can help you in with his his increased defense and his allied protection. He can be a good kind of support champion as well. Brings in a leech. There's a lot of areas in the game that you can actually use Vasolf to carry. And also hit hard.
Yeah, like on this account, we do have Helicats and Man-Eaters who are doing unkillable stuff. But for like other players, if you did pull up Verself early, he's absolutely insane for a clan boss team. It's so much protection, the leech as well, that you get out of lifesteal gear. He's insane for clan boss early game. And I think he's a nice combo with Ultimate Death Knight. You could even potentially speed chain them together a bit, because Ultimate Death Knight does do an AoE fear. And then Verself does an extra hit on enemies who are under fear. And I'm not 100% up to date. I believe that he is still the hardest hitting HP based nuker in the game. The hardest hitting one, if he gets that extra hit, I believe. Hits even harder than Magnar.
He's definitely up there. He's one of, say, top 3. Again, I'm also not sure about the rankings if they've changed a bit. And
I
think he is still number 1.
Yeah.
If that contingency is met. And he is a fantastic carry, as I mentioned, in some of the secret rooms. So he's definitely not going to be someone that's a waste to build in the long run. You are going to get benefit from him. So that I was kind of thinking there with Ultimate Death Knight, as you said, kind of nice partnership. Ultimate Death Knight also has the provoke on the A1 as well, which can also tee up the double hit. So there's multiple ways that Ultimate Death Knight will add some synergy.
Yeah.
And then we thought to really make this team a pain and a nuisance, we'd throw in Man-Eater.
Yes.
Have the unkillable, have the block debuffs. That really makes this team a pain to kill. If you try and if the enemy comes in and is like, okay, I'm just going to focus on killing Man-Eater, well, then you've got Ultimate Death Knight's passive. And if you don't kill the Man-Eater, then everyone's unkillable. So it becomes a bit of a nuisance. But the thing that I wasn't sure about is who the 4th champion is. So I kind of left that slot open as a flex.
It's awkward, isn't it? You could put in something like the Doom Priest for some healing and some cleansing. Exactly. Or again, further down the line, that's where definitely something like a Vogoth could come in there to let you, or Sandlash, something like that, to let you survive that first hit. That could be quite nasty. You could Kunoichi, I think, down there is not a bad option either. There's some decent stuff. But yeah, it's tricky. This was the hardest roster, right? Where the options are more limited. But it's trying to be a pain, basically, with a couple of these teams. You could throw in the Paragon, Stoneskin Paragon, my boy. He could come in here.
Just extending the Man-Eater unkillable.
Oh, man. But or I mean, Deliana could actually, in terms of a passive, she's not built now on this account, and she's a really good champion. That's obviously getting tricky in terms of having 2 legendaries to build up, but she could be a good option with her passive. She doesn't really need to be booked. She could come in and be kind of a nice sort of synergy with that as well. Just help you survive that first hit, getting the strengthen out. It's a possibility.
I think though with the current roster as it is, I think Vasolf will give more value in the long run. And if you then have resources to build another legendary without pulling any more or doing any future fusions, I would probably prioritize Gerptuk, because he's actually really strong in a number of areas of the game and is often underrated and overlooked.
100%.
Really, really good in faction wars, fantastic, and he does bring that block buffs on a placement, so there's no affinity worries. Really good champion actually. So I would probably prioritize him over Deliana. Sorry, Deliana.
And that's totally fair. Well, there you go. Man, we got through a lot in this video. I hope that you guys watching found that helpful to sort of go through. I wonder if you guys came up with similar teams to us, or when we started building the teams, you were like, wow, that's totally different. Let us know in the comments. It'd be actually really curious to know. But it was a really fun. I thought this was a really fun sort of thing to attempt, right? Because early game, it's so difficult to build up these tag teams. Airbad, thank you so much for hopping on and breaking these teams down for us. And yeah, coming up with some hopefully really helpful directions for the three of these players and the viewers.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we are going to be jumping over now, guys, after a brief break, because Airbad has some real life stuff to sort out. We're going to be jumping over to his channel. We're going to be taking another one of the people that submitted here in Discord that is further on in the game, and we're going to break down their account so you get to see a more advanced account with lots more options. Where do you start to go there? And really, like, when you've got the luxury of choice, what are the best choices to make? So stay tuned for that, guys. It's going to be amazing. Again, jump over to his account on YouTube, which is, it's over here. There we go. Ta-da! Flawless transition. Make sure to subscribe to Airbad. Again, for a free-to-play player, it's pretty much like the #1 resource, I think, on YouTube. So there you go. Guys, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.